Is our planet in crisis?
It's just really sad. It's heartbreaking.
As experts raise concerns and the list of issues grows.
Winters come later, springs come earlier.
We're asking what should be done when it comes to the threat of climate change. This week we're on what may be the front lines of the climate change issue in America, the last frontier. In Alaska, climate change isn't just a talking point or debate about the future.
The change is happening regardless of what's causing it.
We'll show you the real impact it's having today. And we'll look at what can be done as this issue is heating up heading into 2020. This is The Race. Welcome to The Race. I'm Chris Stewart, and we're here in Alaska this week. This is a place considered by many experts to be ground zero when it comes to climate change's impact in America. And right behind us is Exit Glacier. This is about 2.5 hours from Anchorage, and it's a prime example of that impact from climate change because it's literally disappearing in front of our eyes. And for the people who live here in this area, climate change's impact is so important because it's melting away iconic parts of their home. Few places on Earth can match what Rick Brown sees every day.
The changes have been coming bang, bang, bang. It's the end of some things, but it's the beginning of other things.
He's been a guide in Alaska since the 90s.
Exit Glacier is one of the smallest glaciers in the Kenai Fjords National Park.
Iconic ice that's time may be running out.
It's got me concerned, because it is retreating at a rapid rate. Whether it is a natural phenomenon or a man-made phenomenon, it's happening.
So it's going all the way from here, all the way back to...
All the way out to there, yeah, and since 2005. Stand right here. And if this doesn't convince you that things are changing, then there's no use in me trying to even convince you.
On tours, Rick's answers to questions on climate change aren't political.
I tell them what I see. I don't know the reason why it's happening.
It's about what's become the reality here.
I don't know if it's human or naturally caused. I think it's both.
Winters come later, springs come earlier.
In the tiny town of Seward, climate change is often the topic of coffee shop conversation.
Because they had scientists up here.
Local historian Doug Capra was once a park ranger. He's documented Exit Glacier's retreat for years.
We're going into different historical periods. My concern is the denial, because I have great admiration for human ingenuity. Human beings have survived all kinds of things, so it's not a question of whether we can survive it, it's a question of how we're going to do it. It's a question of will.
So has climate change hurt your business?
I would say it's changed our business. I don't know if it's hurt it. We've adapted, and that's the key to surviving here is adapting.
And as the dates on the signs that mark where Exit Glacier used to be become more recent, it's clear the clock is ticking.
I would say probably, we're looking at 5 years.
The majority of Earth's fresh water is kept in ice caps and glaciers, meaning their retreat isn't just an Alaskan problem, and not one Rick says should be left to the future.
It's real, folks. The change is happening regardless of what's causing it. We need to get prepared to adapt to deal with the change.
And when it comes to climate change, science says we're at a crossroads. On one hand, we can take drastic steps to address it, or we can stay on the path that we're on and deal with any potential repercussions. But let's face it, we didn't get to this point overnight. Our animator Nick Rafferzo taking a look at what some scientists say got us to this point.
Science says humans are the driving force behind climate change. We have to go back centuries to get an idea of how we got to where we are today. In the 1600s, people started using coal for fuel, more often than wood. It was more widely available and produced more energy. The Industrial Revolution was a turning point. It's when we started burning more fossil fuels for energy. By the early 1800s, people were using high-pressure boilers to fuel coal-powered engines on trains, steamboats, even ships. The first theory of human-caused climate change came about in 1838. A physicist proposed that water vapor and carbon dioxide could trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere. Then, in 1876, a Russian scientist observed that, since the Industrial Revolution, Siberian glaciers started melting. Scientists say sea levels are between 5 and 8 inches higher today than they were in 1900. Some climate change critics argue temperatures are going down in some places. Scientists say that's somewhat true, but that overall, Earth's temps are on the rise. Critics also argue humans aren't behind climate change. Scientists say there's a direct correlation between human carbon emissions and rising temperatures. Still, some scientists believe our right now culture will make the crisis worse. They say things like same-day delivery and frequent air travel can all put more carbon into the atmosphere. That carbon traps heat that then warms the Earth.
Now, how hot is the Earth today, and how much hotter can it get until the consequences become more severe? Annie Taylor has the facts on climate warnings.
Chris, our partners at PolitiFact found that although global temperatures are up, there's still no exact benchmark on when things will actually get worse or if they're irreversible.
Earth's average temperature is 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit higher today than it was in the early 1900s. NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies says temps are up 1.6 degrees since the late 1800s. Different reports warn that warming 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius or 2.7 to 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit would cause fundamental change to regional weather patterns, sea levels, coral, and crop yields. One report predicts Earth will reach the 1.5 degree mark between 2030 and 2052. NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies compares those benchmarks to driving. Its director says driving even slightly faster than normal around a curve increases the risk of a bad outcome.
Experts also point out that there are other ways besides temperature to measure climate change's progress. I'm Annie Taylor for The Race.
When you think American wine, you probably think Napa Valley, but warming temperatures are changing that, so Archive Beach found that conditions are ripe a little north of there.
So the climate change, one of the big impacts is that you cannot farm every year the same way. This is Chardonnay, Pinot country, cool climate. However, one of the effects we had seen, for example, in the 5 years of drought, is the loss of coastal fog.
It's harvest time on California's Central Coast. And winemaker Jean-Pierre Wolf has seen a 20% drop in production since last year.
Some of my older vines did suffer from salt toxicity and have been steadily declining.
Wolf owns and operates the award-winning Wolf Vineyards.
This particular wine is our old vine Chardonnay. The vines are 44 years old.
He says climate change is affecting his grapes, and he has the records to prove it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have my lab book where I describe extensively the harvest and the sugar level of the grapes. So definitely I see these changes.
Changes, he says, are linked to extreme weather, like longer droughts, hotter summers, and milder winters.
I've been farming here 20 years, and years ago I didn't have to worry about sunburns on my grapes. Now I do.
And while he might not be able to change the climate, Wolf does plan on changing his practices.
Instead of irrigating above ground through these drip lines, this pipe goes 3 feet below ground to the root zone.
I'm Kai Beach reporting.
Much more ahead from Alaska. This is The Race.